And one of my goals for the Hair Foundation is to figure out like how can the Hair Foundation work with the county, work with the city to make sure that Pittsburgh becomes one of the safest cities in the country.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what an amazing vision. And we're all here for it too. Haha, you see what I did there? Hi, I'm County Executive Sara Innamorato, and today I'm joined by my good friend Leon Ford, a Pittsburgh native, celebrated author, social entrepreneur, and mental health ambassador. Leon's commitment to holistic wellness and resilience has transformed personal challenges into a powerful force for lasting community change. Thank you, Leon, for coming on and doing this with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm like, you might be the only person that smiles more than me. Like, ever since you just
No doubt.
it was like all teeth over here.
I was telling everyone in the office that I got to interview you today, and some people are familiar with you, some aren't, and I'm just like, it's just the kindest soul you'll ever interact with.
I appreciate that.
So you just exude warmth, and appreciate you bringing that wherever you go.
Thank you.
So we're doing these interviews. You're our last one, so thank you for being part of the series. I'll just start off with, what does Black History Month mean to you in the context of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County?
Black History Month for me in the context of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County is the legacy and contributions of our Black residents. And so we have so many amazing people from this region who have made contributions to this region and also to the world, right? And I think about, activists. I think about, artists and creatives. I think about authors. One of my favorite people, and he's actually a personal mentor of mine, is John Ecker Wideman from Homewood, right?
Yeah.
And so when people see me and as an author, right, he's someone that inspired me to write, and so I think about the people who paved the way for us to do what we do, and have made those contributions. And I think, for the younger generation, folks like Summer Lee, myself, Ed Gainey, we're literally carrying a torch that, those leaders before us kind of passed to us. So I think it's great, and I think, we have so much to accomplish, and we'll continue to inspire the youth who are coming up behind us.
Tell me about the work that you're currently doing. You're a social entrepreneur, you run the Hair Foundation, so tell us about the work that you're doing in the community every day.
Yeah, so I'm all over the place. What I feel like my purpose is in the space of healing and reconciliation. One thing about history is it's not always beautiful, right? Sometimes history is very painful and tough, and we live in a time where there are people who want to suppress history, right? They don't want to tell the truth of those painful experiences and moments where people in our country were hurt, and so, as someone who was shot by a police officer, that's a painful story of Pittsburgh, right? Like, that was a tough moment, whether you were a police officer or, an activist, or however you viewed the situation, from a political lens. But it happened. It happened in the city, and it affected everyone. And so I was just fortunate that community wrapped their arms around me, so that my heart didn't become hardened and cold, right? So the love from community really just kept me encouraged and inspired. And I had so many different aspects of community supporting me, and many parts of community that maybe wouldn't even communicate with one another. After I was shot, it's interesting, the first two groups who supported me were the Quakers, right, the Pittsburgh Friends, and the Nation of Islam, right?
Wow, okay.
Right. So just think of like the differences between those two groups. But that is what really stands out from my story, is because I was able to bring so many different people together, and it'll be 13 years since I was shot. Right, and so now, I'm working with the Pittsburgh Police. The co-founder of the Hair Foundation is our former Chief of Police, Scott Schubert, who now works, for the FBI, and we're bridging the gap between the police and community, and we do that in many different ways. I'm very careful not to just go and tell young black men and women like, hey, I built relationships with the police, you should trust the police, because it's more complicated than that. And so, we always talk about the speed of trust, right? So how do you facilitate trust and how you get people to trust one another? And so we have different programs. So we partner with Team 412 Boxing, where I'm a boxing coach. We started a program called Cops and Corners, where we have police officers coming to coach boxing alongside myself and Coach Hoy, right? And that's interesting because when we, for instance, we had Aaron Allen, who's a state trooper. He would come down, and he's a police officer, and then you would have me. And at first, the youth would feel like, okay, we are loyal to Leon, right? Or we're loyal to, Coach Aaron. And so they would get with me, and they would be like, yeah, we don't like police officers, and they would get to with Aaron and not talk about me. Yeah. But bringing us two together, they realize how complex it is, right? And so we also have a program, Ready for Work, where we partner with First Tee, and we're teaching youth how to golf and caddy alongside Pittsburgh police officers. So it's all relationship building while we're simultaneously having those tough conversations. We also do the Breaking Bread series with Cafe Momentum, where once a month I host a dinner at Cafe Momentum with the youth, and we bring in special guests. Last month we had our Chief Ragland come, and it was interesting. The students were like, well, why'd y'all shoot Leon? You know what I mean? And why is the officer still working? And, Chief Ragland, gave them honest perspective and feedback. And by the end of the meeting, we had two youth, right, who are within the juvenile justice system say, well, can I become a police officer? Right? So that because of that conversation, their perspective shift. And I think that is the powerful thing that we're doing. Like we're bridging the gap between police and community by acknowledging the history and the painful past, and figuring out like what are the gaps that we can fill to have a healthier relationship. And then once we have that healthier relationship, then we can be able to increase public safety. And one of my goals for the Hair Foundation is to figure out like how can the Hair Foundation work with the county, work with the city to make sure that Pittsburgh becomes one of the safest cities in the country.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what an amazing vision. And we're all here for it too. You see what I did there? I really appreciate you sharing that, and especially weaving in your own personal story and the trauma associated with it. And I think it's so important when you talk about trust, because progress moves at the speed of trust. Absolutely. And if you don't have that, if you aren't acknowledging the ugly realities and confronting them so you can be better, so that we can be better as a society, then we're not gonna be able to move forward collectively. So I appreciate you sharing that moment of vulnerability as well. I wanna go back to you a little bit more and kind of get a sense of like, how do you keep yourself going? It's hard to stand up on a stage, and you get to travel all over the nation, all over the world telling this story. So what keeps you motivated, and how do you find a sense of peace and calm and all of that?
Yeah, what keeps me motivated? That's a really good question. Yep. And it reminds me, so 2 days ago, we had a mini youth summit at the Heinz History Center. And I had donated the clothes that I had on the night I was shot to the center. And they, went through a process and preserved the items. And we, had the items set up in a room, and the youth had the opportunity to come. And these are youth that I've been working with, some of them for two or 3 years. They read my book. They see me around. I'm always smiling, and now they're looking at the clothes that I had on, and you could see the blood. You could see the bullet holes. And to look at those items and to remember what happened to me, right? And to go back to that night on November 11th, 2012, and say, I could have lost my life this day, but I survived, and I survived for a reason. That reason is what keeps me going, right? I know people that got shot one time and died, right? People within my family, and so I do believe I'm here for a reason, and I think I have a responsibility. I'm a man of faith, so I have a responsibility to God to fulfill a higher purpose. And so, I have a mentor. He always say, we're not here for ourselves or by ourselves. And so my lived experience, even the painful moments, are moments of impact, right? That's not just for me, but for those people around me. And so that's what keeps me going, thinking about the impact that I could leave on the world, knowing that I am a mortal man, which means I'm going to die one day. And not in a scary way, like, oh my God, right? But like the reality, like we're humans, we transition, right? And so since I know I'm going to die one day, what should I be doing now? What really matters? And that's one of the reasons why I'm able to forgive. I'm able to move forward. I'm able to live life with a perspective of curiosity that, and like, I'm always thinking like, well, why did that person say that? Or why do they believe that? And I'm trying to unpack the layers because I know, as humans, we all really want to do the right thing, and our perspectives may be different, and what we view as being right or wrong may be different. And if we get to the root of it, using that curiosity, we'll realize how much we have in common. And I was able to do that with law enforcement, even though I was shot by a police officer, right? I don't hate, law enforcement. I believe that, they're like within any profession, there's room for innovation and growth and progress. And, when we lean into, those parts of society where we may have, some issues, then we could, lean on our innovation and our purpose to fill a gap. And that's what creating history is all about. So history is the past, but it's also the present, because we're creating history with all the decisions that we're making in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so beautiful. And I love what you said about just treating confrontation with curiosity and really trying to get people to question beliefs they may hold, especially when they're ones that aren't rooted in justice and might be rooted in, one of the toxic isms that we face as a society. Do you have a story of a time where you treated someone with that curiosity and you were able to change their heart and mind on something?
Oh, yeah. Let me think. I met with the officer who shot me.
Wow.
Right? So it's like, it doesn't get more curious than that, right?
Yeah,
And so people thought like, why? Why would you meet with the officer who shot you? And there's two reasons. One, I took a few classes at Duquesne University. And one of the classes was Police and Society, where I got to learn about policing. The other class was a psychology class, right? And so taking those two classes, connected them to my lived experience, I went back to that traffic stop, and I began to think about, like, how did this happen, okay? And so this officer said he feared for his life, and he jumped inside my vehicle, and he shot me. I feared for my life, and I drove off, right? And so, from a psychological perspective, when you don't feel safe, you experience fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? He fought, right? I took flight. What is the solution to that, right? The solution is safety, right? When you feel safe, you don't feel these feelings. And so I began to think, well, how do you manufacture safety, right? Well, the best way to get an understanding of that curiosity is to talk to someone who shot someone, right? And then talk to the person who was shot.
Yeah.
Well, I was shot, and I wanted to talk to the officer who shot me. And so that's an example of curiosity. And also, as leaders, right, sometimes, like, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, right? Like, you can have your personal feelings, your emotions, your thoughts that are different than how you show up in leadership, right? And those thoughts and feelings can inform your leadership. But a good leader for me is someone who's able to consider those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right? Understand, what is rooted in fear, what is rooted in trauma, and then make an informed decision that is not, only validating their personal feelings, right? But that is progressively moving forward to change and impact the lives of so many people out there in the community. And so my personal feelings was like, man, I don't like this dude, he shot me, and a bunch of negative thoughts. But as a leader, I began to think about, how many young people are stopped by the police, right? And how quickly, it could turn into a situation where someone is shot, right? And so me meeting with them and trying to get an understanding of the mindset without judging. Because it's easy to look at someone and like, hey, you're a bad person, right? But as a leader, it's like, okay, cool, right? This is what happened. I drove off, you jumped in the car, you shot me. How do we prevent this from happening again, right? And then you can unpack it and then find solutions that benefits not only the community, not only the police, but the entire city.
Wow. You're an incredible leader and so wise, and have shared so much with us. Who do you look at for mentorship, or what historical figures really inspire you and inform the work that you do and your approaches to it?
So I'm very fortunate to have a really good relationship with my father and my grandfather. They, just have given me some of the best advice and wisdom. John Edgar Whitman, he's someone that, I could call up for advice. And then, we have, I'll be 32 this year. We have so many elders in this city, right, that I reach out to in regards to mental health. Dr. Raymond Logan, he's just like, such a profound leader. And his whole thing is like, I did all this research and all this school, and I want to pass it back. So before I transition, I want to give as much as I learned back to my community. So you have people like him, Brother Malcolm Thomas. He's Brother Men. He's somebody who's just like pours into me. And these are people who live and walk and breathe the same air in Pittsburgh every day that we're breathing. Lenny McAllister, he's someone who's always, like giving me like a political lens through things. Fred Brown is like giving me the lens from a philanthropic, and so like I just have like, so many amazing men who pour into me, and just guide me. And then, I got my prayer warriors, you know what I mean? I got the women in my life who just, love on me, and they're always praying for me, and ensuring that, I have the strength and the capacity to do the work that I do. And I really feel like I'm like, Pittsburgh's son, right? Because the community has wrapped its arms around me so graciously, right? Like even when I've made mistakes, people still loved on me. And so I'm always challenging people and asking people like, yeah, what if we could love every young person in Pittsburgh, right? And pour into every young person in Pittsburgh like you all have poured into me, like you all have loved me. And I believe that will completely transform the city, because I was once, when you see those kids down in Market Square, like, yo, I was terrorizing the T station when I was coming home from school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know how many fights we started down there? You know what I mean? And it's like, yo, that's part of like the process in growing up, but we can't count out our youth. We have to pour into them. And also, we can't forget our elders. Like I specifically and intentionally named people who are in this city, like Bill Jenneret. He's another one. Like Bill Jenneret just like gives me so much information and wisdom. And just like he's been someone to just help guide me. And so we have those individuals, and oftentimes we overlook them. Another one of my heroes is Brother Mel, right? Like Brother Mel, he's like, he shows up, he loves everybody. He's going to take his picture with you. He's going to give you some encouragement, right? And when we talk about history, they are the people, like they're aging, you know what I'm saying? And so we have and I'm like very intentional and selfish about it. I'm like, I want to talk to them as much as I can to get as much wisdom, and they want to share it. And so when we connect the worlds, right, from an intergenerational perspective, I think there's so much wisdom that can be shared both ways. And, with that wisdom, there's so many ideas and solutions to some of our societal ills that I think could be resolved if we would just talk to one another more.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were rattling off the names of the people that you look up to and that you lean on for mentorship, I'm like, oh, next year we're going to have to expand our interview list, because you mentioned a lot of people who are making Pittsburgh history, who are making Black history here in our region.
Yeah, and listen, Black history is American history, so you don't have to stop just because February's over.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You can highlight these individuals all year round. So.
Yeah, you're spot on. Well, I love that you wove that intergenerational message. And I'm sure there are a lot of young people coming up in our region that look at you as a mentor, that look at you as a leader. So what's the message you have for the young Black leaders who are coming up after you?
I would say to those young Black leaders, trust yourself, because you're capable. And, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've made mistakes, but learn from those mistakes and keep rising. One of my favorite moments as a mentor was after Antoine Rose was murdered. I was so depressed. I was out of it, and I was just like, I just, mentally couldn't deal with it, right? And so I flew to California, and I had guilt for leaving Pittsburgh, right? And but I knew I needed to be away. And when I seen the news, and I saw Khalil Darden, right, and Amber Amber Sloan leading the protest, it just reminded me that when you pour into people, right, and trust them, they will fill the gap. Right, and I was no longer needed to do that work in that way, because they stepped up, and I've mentored Khalil since he was in the 7th or 8th grade, you know what I mean, and Amber's my aunt, but there's moments, in her journey where she would lean on me and talk to me about different things, and to watch that, right, and so I say that to mentors because sometimes as mentors, we want to protect our mentees or our children, right? We want to hold their hand, and we like, we believe in them, but whenever they're tested, their leadership is tested, you know, we want to protect them. And sometimes it's like the protection is just in the wisdom, right? You plant the seed, you water the seed, and you just let it go. And then they will show you, right? Like, yo, they're so capable. And that was a proud moment for me, you know, to see them really take charge and lead in a way. And it relieved me because God called me to do some different things, right? To be in some different rooms that helped them in their mission, right? And now to watch Khalil and Amber grow, right, and evolve, and now they're in different rooms and they're pouring into people. It's just like a ripple effect of impact, right? It reminds me of like the movie Pay It Forward, right? When the kid Trevor, he's like, yo, you help 3 people and they help 3 people. Yeah. And it's a ripple effect. And that's why this intergenerational connection is so important, because like, you know, you get the wisdom from the elders, you continue to pass it down, and you watch more and more leaders begin to show up in their different ways.
Yeah, yeah. So you've done an incredible amount of work in the region, but you also take your work and you have taken it to a national and international platform. So what's it like to be on the national and international stage and bring your experience in Pittsburgh with you? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a two-way street, right? And you know, people will say like think global, act local. So like me traveling internationally has helped shape and form ideas. You know, an example, I didn't think about like healing and reconciliation being my platform until I moved to Europe, right? And I was with a bunch of venture capitalists who were thinking about how to solve global problems. And I was able to view my pain point, which was being shot by a police officer, through a global lens, right? And it's like, not like, oh, these officers hurt me and like, you know, Pittsburgh is racist and all these different things. It's like, okay, cool. Like, what is the problem and how do I find a solution to that problem? I was able to simplify a very complex issue, which informed me and encouraged me to go take those courses at Duquesne, which led to me meeting with the officer who shot me, which then led to us launching the Hair Foundation, and right, and so thinking with that global lens helped, but also coming from Pittsburgh, right, and the many different dynamics dealing with local politics and leadership here in Pittsburgh has helped me consult some national and international organizations, right? An example, like here in Pittsburgh, we're all 1 degree of separation away from whoever you want to talk to, right? Exactly. And so when you look at my board, you know, our board at the Hair Foundation, it's a very diverse board. Some people are like, yeah, how do you get, you know, like Aaron Dalton and, you know, Jason Rivers or like whomever, in the same, on the same board for the same mission, you know, the same cause. We're 1 degree of separation away. And so it took meeting and connecting people, and, you know, using different, you know, conflict resolution and mediation tools, right, to get people on the same page. Well, because we were able to do that successfully here in Pittsburgh, right? I know it worked in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's a small town. Everybody knows everyone. Then I was able to help, again, national organizations do similar things, and international organizations really think through, like, we have this issue, right? Here are all the players involved. They don't want to talk to each other, right? So how do you get them in the same room? And I believe that me meeting with the officer who shot me and co-founding the Hair Foundation with our former police chief has given me credibility where those individuals, whether, you know, I've consulted companies in Portugal, right? And I've done work in Berlin, you know, and those individuals see the work that, we've been able to do in Pittsburgh, and they're like, yo, it works, right? It's a proven concept.
Yeah.
If you could come over and help us do it, right, could be very impactful. And I really enjoyed doing that. But last year I moved back home to Pittsburgh. And I do still consult some national and international organizations. But there was something different about going wide, right, than it is going deep. And for my legacy, and as I began to think about my legacy in the context of history, right, I wanted to go deep. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going deep into Pittsburgh and really trying to transform our city, because I feel like we are, at an inflection point in our city. And it's up to us, right, to allow the leaders of yesterday to inform our work, bring our innovative ideas, and move our city and our county forward.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Leon, so much for your
Thank
time,
you.
for your wisdom, for your joy, for your smile, and for helping to build a better Pittsburgh and a better world.
I appreciate you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate you.